The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Kyle Hamilton, Ravens extension. It is officially official.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
Well, let's dive into the big news. That is Kyle Hamilton, an extension that, just needed to happen. The Ravens needed to try to get into this mode of getting extensions signed. And that is what happened. We've seen them extend Rashad Bateman. We've seen them extend Derrick Henry. Ronnie Stanley obviously got his as well. So, at the end of the day, the Ravens get the job done. This is a 4-year, $100.4 million contract for Kyle Hamilton. $82 million of that is guaranteed. That just absolutely blows the safety market out of the water here. For context, Kirby Joseph of the Lions, he signed a couple of months ago, $85 million in total value with a $21.25 million average annual value. So Kyle Hamilton gets almost $4 million more per season than Kirby Joseph got. Plus, in terms of the guaranteed money, Kyle Hamilton, he got 82. The next closest to him is Antoine Winfield Jr. at $45 million. Almost $40 million more guaranteed for Kyle Hamilton, as opposed to what we saw from Antoine Winfield. So look, this is very well deserved for Kyle Hamilton. This is something that, you couldn't have let Kyle Hamilton walk out of the building, right? You just couldn't have let that happen. So I'm glad that they were able to get the job done. It is official now. Eric DeCosta has announced it. And I like the Ravens doing it this way, where they actually go and sign the whole situation with Kyle Hamilton is you get him signed and you don't wait, right? You don't wait. Hamilton, it's going to be a 2-year deal, or not a 2-year deal, 2-year extension on top of what Hamilton, obviously it was this year for Hamilton. He had his 5th-year option. So I believe you're adding 2 more years onto that, which would put him there till 2030, if I'm doing the math, or doing some quick math here live on Locked On Ravens. This is a defensive centerpiece. This is a guy that absolutely earned and deserved this deal and this contract. So, for the Ravens, it could have been a lot of different players, right? Lamar obviously still up for an extension. Tyler Linderbaum still up for an extension. Eric DeCosta said he likes to work in the dark on some of these moves. So obviously those are other deals the Ravens would like to get done next. But just getting Hamilton done, and at that price point, I know $100 million, $82 million guaranteed, like all that seems like a lot of money for Kyle Hamilton, which, yeah, it is. But with the way the salary cap works and goes up and gets maneuvered, at the end of the day, Baltimore is going to look back on this deal in 2 years, 3 years, and find it to be an absolute steal. We're doing it with Lamar Jackson right now, right? Lamar signed that deal, huge contract, highest paid quarterback in NFL history. And now 2 years later, after signing that deal, he's now the 10th highest paid quarterback in the NFL, right? So that's the big and important thing. The Ravens have a lot of time to kind of have this deal marinate and say, all right, we signed him to a big deal, get that money out of the way now. But the thing, and Jake Lisco of Locked On Bengals, I credit him every single time I say this, the Bengals are a team that saves $1 million today to only have to spend $5 million tomorrow. Well, the Ravens, they spent $1 million today to save $5 million tomorrow, especially with other safety contracts. And again, I don't know, because Hamilton has the versatility that he does. I don't know if other safeties will begin to ask for $100 million, $25 million per year. But what I do know is that guaranteed money portion of it, that is the bigger reset of the market to me, at least in terms of what other negotiations will probably look like over the course of, the next handful of seasons for that positional group. And it's honestly why the Ravens didn't extend Tyler Linderbaum, well, not extend, but then pick up his 5th-year option, because that would have extended that safety market and blown that out of the water by, $5 million. So you kind of have to pick and choose. Eric DeCosta essentially during his press conference saying that, we're probably not going to keep everybody. Now, he didn't say that word for word. He's obviously trying to get everybody. And we actually just got some breaking news on the waiver, so we'll get to that in a couple of minutes in terms of who was claimed and who was not. But, for me, there's just a lot to love here. I think it's honestly a really good deal. The longer you wait, the more you're going to have to pay the guy. So this is really big. This is really, really big. And for a guy like Kyle Hamilton, who can play every single position for you on defense, almost every, you're not going to line him up at nose tackle, but he can line up everywhere. He's a great blitzer off the edge. Obviously, the range is there. We saw that last season. Play up in the box. It's almost like its own position. It's like defensive weapon almost is what Kyle Hamilton's positional group is, or at least where he's classified as. He's not a traditional just single high safety or two high guy. Like he can go all over the place. So that market in particular, that's probably going to be a lot bigger of a deal. But yeah, this is a win for me. I give it an A grade for the Ravens. There's nothing not to like here. In my opinion, nothing not to like. So Baltimore right now, they still have a lot of room to go in terms of extensions. I actually put out the extension tracker that I have been working with. And you still have guys. We talked about Lamar Jackson and Tyler Linderbaum. You also have to figure out Zay Flowers down the line. Obviously, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are both up for extensions after this season, as is Travis Jones, as is Odafe Owe. Marlon Humphrey, obviously, his deal's coming to a close. If you want to go way far down the line, Roquan Smith is up for an extension. I think he's in 3 years, so you really don't have to be worrying about Roquan right now. But yeah, this to me it's a big deal. It's a big deal. The Ravens are willing to pay their guys, and this is how the Ravens like to do it anyway, right? They like their homegrown talent. They like to go out there, draft well, develop well, and then by the time they're ready for extensions, they're not going to like cheap him out of contracts or anything. But if Hamilton hit the open market in 2 years when his 5th-year option was done, he would have probably gotten like at that point 130, 125 million per season, not per season. No, wow, that'd be crazy. Per year, it'd only be about still 25, 30, but he'd be getting a heck of a lot more money. And especially, I think, I'm not saying he gave like a home down discount or anything. I'm not saying that, but for a lot of those top end players, rarely do they even hit free agency in the first place. Like you get it sometimes, but generally, when a team has a good player and you're a good team, you want to sign those guys to long-term deals. And the Ravens did that here today. Extension news. This was beautiful, honestly, to have happen right now. You wanted to get it done before the season. I'm not sure they get any other extensions. I mean, look, I'm hoping we can manifest that in the air if we want to. I'm trying to, but right now, the big thing for me is Hamilton is done. You have to worry about that. And outside of Lamar, that was the most important extension for me. So now hopefully attention does turn to Lamar. And, I'm seeing some of the comments. Edward, appreciate you checking in from the UK. Kyle Hamilton's the GOAT. Yeah, Hamilton. Yeah, and I see Boulder saying LJ next, hopefully before the season. I hope it's before the season. If it's not, I don't expect anything to happen in season for the Ravens with these extensions. I just don't. Lamar, last time the whole contract thing happened, made it pretty clear that he was not going to negotiate in season, which is fine. It's fine. It's not a huge deal. But so I'm expecting that to be kind of the same train of thought for him, for the Ravens and Lamar this time around. I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what they can get going here. And I see Steve saying Hamilton will be a Raven for life. Hopefully this is true. Through 2030, at least that's, again, what my math is telling me right now, that's expected to be big, right? It's incredible. It's incredible. I'm pumped. I'm through the roof. If you're with us in the chat live or in the comments after the fact, put down how you're feeling. 1 to 10. How you feeling? 1 being not great, 10 being exceptionally great. I don't think we're going to be seeing a lot of 1s. I'm a 10. I'm an 11. Honestly, we're wearing the celebratory shirt here on the stream. We always got the palm trees going when something celebratory happens. I see Emil here in the chat. Very excited for our defense this year. And that's the thing too, being able to go out there and make something happen. And Cube, I was about to say, we're feeling a 1, but Cube corrected from a 1 to an 11. We got Mikey at an 100. I might have to 1-up you. I might have to go 101. I might have to just keep going and going and going, because that is where we are right now. But for the Ravens, Hamilton, not the only piece of news. It's a big one because of what Hamilton brings to the table. And of course, just to look up his stats very quickly here to get a baseline of what he's been able to do in the league so far. And I'll give you I'll give you a cheat sheet. He's been very, very good over the course of his 3 years, in the NFL. This is his 4th year coming up. 250 total tackles, 4 forced fumbles, 27 passes defensed, 5 interceptions. And again, he's been an all-pro, Pro Bowl, like the whole 9 yards there. Kyle Hamilton is here to stay.
August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Perhaps you believe the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, or maybe you have a division winner, dark horse you'd like to parlay. Maybe the Broncos and the Seahawks. You'd get some juicy odds on that if you wanted to do it. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
After like a week of negotiation and hope upon hopes, Adam Thielen has returned to the Vikings.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The big news, Adam Thielen is a Minnesota Viking once more. It sounds like it really was tough to pry him away from Carolina. When I first heard about this as an idea, I thought, nah, Carolina won't give him up. Or at least they won't do so, easily, right? You throw 2 first-round picks at him and it's different, right? But, they won't give him up for a compensation you'll feel good about. And I think we're kind of pushing that line. So let's start with the actual terms of the trade. The Vikings swap this year, or this draft, 2026, a 5th and a 7th. So they send a 5th, they get back a 7th. And then next year, they send a 4th, and they get back a 5th. So I've seen a lot of people frame this trade as like the Vikings gave up a 4th and a 5th for Adam Thielen. It's patently untrue. They got back a 5th and a 7th as well. A 4-7 swap, you could call it, but that doesn't do the years right. It's a 5-7 swap and then a 4-5 swap the next season. How things go this year will also change that a lot. If the Vikings are good and the Panthers are bad, which if you go by the FanDuel odds, that's not a crazy outcome. Then, you might not even be moving down that many slots in the 2026 or in the 2027 draft when you do the 4th and 5th swap. If it's like that in 2026, right? That's not crazy. So I don't think like there's something to these day 3 swaps when it's 2 picks for 2 picks, that the value can only be so much in day 3. And if you look at the trade charts, if you punch this into all of the trade charts, there's a Hefe's Handiwork is the trade chart calculator that I often use when we talk about draft trades. All the different trade charts that have been concocted by everybody from Jimmy Johnson, who did the first one famously, to all the different like analytics organizations that have tried to quantify what it means to trade a 4th round pick for a 5th round pick. If you punch it into all of those, and depending on how you feel about where the Vikings and Panthers will land in those years and whether they're early or mid or late picks, the Vikings essentially paid a 5th round pick's worth of value. So that's, I think, the best way to frame it. It is a 5th round pick worth of value, give or take, depending on some assumptions you make and which trade chart you choose to use. And they just did it in this really weird piecemeal way, but it sounded like that's how it had to go. It sounded like the Panthers said 4th round pick. There were some reports that it was about like the money, and I'll get to the money. But the money worked out a lot easier than it sounds like the draft picks did. At least according to like Rappaport and Pelissero. So it sounded like the Panthers said 4th round pick. The Vikings did not have a 4th round pick. Their 4th round pick currently belongs to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they used it to obtain Cam Robinson. So they had to reach into another year to get a 4th round pick eventually. But in order to do that, in order to wait 2 years, the Panthers needed a little bit of extra value. That's basically what it sounded like there, where the Panthers said, okay, we'll take that, deferred 4th round pick, but you got to move one of our 5ths up to next year or up to this year. Right. And then as a sweetener, we get a 7th round pick in return. So that's, I think, more of the way the negotiation went down. As for the money, the Panthers don't take on any of the salary. However, as of this recording, the Vikings and Adam Thielen are in negotiations for Adam Thielen to take a reduced salary. He currently costs $7 million on the cap. He doesn't sound like he's going to be paid all of that $7 million. Yesterday, I addressed the notion, mostly this came from like Kevin Seifert's reporting, that the Vikings were potentially up against like a cash budget. There were 2 responses to that video, 2 different kinds of responses to that video. All of the comments fell into one of 2 categories. The first was people who did not watch the video and thought that I was complaining about the Vikings being out of cash, rather than disproving that and kind of showing that it is very much not true. And then people who were like, ha ha ha, who also didn't watch the video. So we can talk all we want about them. I know they're not watching because they don't watch the videos, but the people who were like, ha ha ha, Adam Thielen made you look so silly, when like it actually proves my point that the Vikings weren't really up to a cash budget. But I don't think it does a great job of proving my point, because that money would obviously have been earmarked, right? And so when they're making their roster cut down decisions, they have that money, they have the understanding that they're going to be paying this much to Adam Thielen, whatever that number ends up being. And then they're up against their budget after accounting for that, which was like how you should be doing your accounting. So I don't know if that necessarily disproves the cash budget thing, but it's still just doesn't hold any water on its own. So we don't need the Thielen thing to disprove it. So I don't know what money he is going to make. He did knock Tim Jones off the roster. The Vikings released their practice squad. I'll get into it in more detail, but Tim Jones was on that list and is now no longer listed on the Vikings website on the 53-man roster. And then I think Andrew Kramer just straight up confirmed it via his reporting that Tim Jones had been released and brought to the practice squad instead. So now Adam Thielen is here in Minnesota, ready to take over for the first little bit. But the question is, how good is Thielen at this stage in his career? He's turning 35 years old. And in a related question, was that compensation worth it? If we call it, they traded a 5th for Adam Thielen and then they paid him whatever they're going to pay him, is that compensation worth Adam Thielen? I find it really hard to argue no. I think it has to be a clear yes, because a 5th rounder in value, which is different from, a bunch of pick swaps that equate to a 5th rounder, but basically sliding back on day 3 a couple times. That's what they did. Sliding back on day 3 a couple times is almost certainly not going to do more for the Vikings than what 1 year of Adam Thielen can do for the Vikings at this stage in his career, unless Thielen is so giga turbo washed that he sucks and he can't contribute to the offense at all, and then it was a bad trade, and you're definitely taking that risk. They have a lot of data on how Thielen is aging. They can look at the last couple of years and see how Thielen played and probably be really satisfied with that. But you don't get any younger, so you have to assume that the next year you're going to look a little older than the year before, because that's how time works, unfortunately for all of us. And so you have to make that determination. But to me, thinking through what the compensation is, and Kwesi does these trades this way where it's like 3 picks for 3 picks and all this weird stuff, and you're pulling picks from 3 different years. And it makes it a little bit hard to parse out. And it's why you get weird stuff like, that he can trade a 4th for a 6th and a player, and then you'll hear that he traded a 4th for the player. Like, no, he traded a 4-6 swap for the player. That's an incredibly different thing. So I just don't think they paid that much for Adam Thielen, even after Carolina kind of dug their heels in and got what they wanted. Good for them. They got a 5th to turn into a 4 in 2027. But that's just not really considered to be that big of a deal when you have to wait for 2 years for it to happen. And then you just swap 1 round on day 3.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
We got that 53-man roster for you, and Tim Patrick is not on.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast.
All right, everybody knows I love this man. Ross Tucker is with us. Ross Tucker Football Podcast, NFL on CBS, college football on CBS, Westwood One. Joins us right now, NFL analyst and, of course, former NFL offensive lineman here as we're getting ready for Lions season to begin. Ross, great to see you.
Great to see you as well, Matt. And I think everybody knows I love this show. I love Locked On Lions podcast. Love Lions fans. Thrilled for you guys. I was telling you before we started, Matt, how fired up I am about futurefans.com just because I want all the Lions fans out there to have the experience they should have, which is having their children actually watch the games with them. I mean, I don't know, Matt, you know, if you have kids or how old they are or whatever, but with my girls, like, it's been really hard to actually get them to sit down and watch the games with me. And I hear that from a lot of my friends, right? You know, we're in our mid-40s. So a lot of my friends that have kids that are 5 or 8 or 10, they want to be on their iPad. They don't want to just watch the games and sit there and enjoy the games like we did with our dads. I mean, that was like, to me, Matt, every Sunday, it was church, then home, and watch the game with my dad in the basement. Like, that was what we did, but it's just not like that for kids. And by the way, the league knows this. The leagues, plural, Major League Baseball, NBA, they know that children are kind of consuming sporting events differently. They're worried about it, but thankfully I found these guys at futurefans.com. You'll appreciate this. They're actually Bengals fans that a few years ago, they couldn't get their kids to watch the Bengals Super Bowl run, right? So like, and their kids are like, I'll watch next year, Daddy. They're like, no. We're the Bengals. Like, we're going to the Super Bowl. You got to sit on the couch and watch. That doesn't work. Futurefans.com works. It's a storybook-led activity box that explains how football works, right? So what are like 5-year-old kids or 7-year-old kids like? They like books. They like playing games. Well, they combine those two things so that now they understand football. They want to watch the game with you. So I think it's like $60. They have a discount code if you go to futurefans.com. You can act like you're giving your kid a gift, but let's be honest, you're really giving a gift to yourself of hopefully having your child have that shared experience for 3 hours every Sunday. And for the Lions, a lot of Monday nights, Sunday nights, etc. Hopefully for years to come.
Hold on a second, because you have middle school age daughters. I know they like Taylor Swift. You have a Taylor Swift connection, so that this all could come together right here. See?
You know what? And Alex Anzalone has that same Taylor Swift connection. So we're all from Wyomissing, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Let's put it this way. My daughters are way more interested in Taylor Swift than they are in the NFL or watching games on
or
TV.
Ross Tucker podcast.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully futurefans.com can help a little bit, but it's hard to beat Taylor Swift, that's for sure, especially with middle school girls.
All right, let's get to it. News of the day. Tim Patrick of the Lions has been traded to Jacksonville. Ross, the Lions are doing it. They are freeing up snaps for Isaac Tesla. What do you think?
I love it. I absolutely love it. First of all, to have a guy like Tim Patrick who bounced around the way he did, and the Lions sort of rehabbed him into getting a 6th-round pick, that's well done by Brad Holmes. That is well done. That guy was left for dead a couple times, Matt. So for them to kind of resuscitate him, revive him, I think speaks well. And they want to get Tesla on the field, right? I mean, they've seen what he can do. They obviously loved him. I think Brad Holmes, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the quote was he was my favorite receiver in the draft.
Oh, yeah.
And then based on how he looked in the preseason, and I'm going to talk about this on Thursday's Ross Tucker Football Podcast with Greg Cosell, because to be honest with you, Matt, I don't really remember even hearing that much or talking with Greg about Tesla before the draft.
Yeah.
So I don't even know. I'm not even sure exactly what Greg's eval was of him, but obviously the kid has been lights out so far, and he's more dynamic and explosive than Patrick is. The reality is, okay, you can find guys like Tim Patrick. You can find solid veteran receivers, reliable. Like those guys are out there. Isaac Tesla looks like he's more than that, right? Like Isaac Tesla looks like he's got more juice than that, more upside. You said it. The time is now. And then they end up having three really good young receivers if Tesla can be as advertised.
It also goes to show Brad Holmes is not messing around. He wants to put the elite players on the field. The Lions have that. You're in Philly. You cover the Eagles and did their preseason games. Do you see a collision course with these two clubs at the end of the year?
I did last year. And unfortunately, as you know, and I'm not trying to bring up a sore subject, but the Lions did not hold up their end of the bargain with that loss to the Commanders. Obviously, myriad of factors, the Lions' health on defense being a big part of that. I actually think there's a bunch of teams in the mix here, right? I think the Eagles are the favorites, and they should be. But I think the Lions will certainly be in the mix. I guess I'm higher on the Packers than other people. They've been really young. They've kind of been building towards this year. Jordan Love was a little bit up and down last year. They had some injury issues last year. But I think the Packers and the Lions are clearly the class of the NFC North. I do think Baker Mayfield always gives the Bucs a puncher's chance in the NFC South. And then the NFC West is interesting because the Rams with Stafford certainly have the firepower to be in the mix. And then I have a sneaky suspicion, I said this, Matt, on the Ross Tucker podcast, I'm expecting the Niners to bounce back in a major way. I think there's really only two ways they can go. They bounce back and become one of the elite teams in the NFC again, or the injury bug continues to hit them. They're old, they're washed up, they're over the hill. I don't believe that. I think, and maybe it's the last hurrah, but I think Trent Williams and Bosa and McCaffrey, I think the Niners come roaring back. I'm actually right now, you can listen to my preview show last week, but I think the Niners have a terrific chance to win the NFC.
You just mentioned, we're talking to Ross Tucker. You just mentioned Green Bay. Do you still like the Lions to win the division, or do you think Green Bay can do it?
I like Green Bay, and I like Green Bay because I have some concerns about the Lions from an injury standpoint again. The biggest one, obviously, being Frank Ragnow. That's a big loss, right?
Yeah.
And I know we're seeing and hearing good things about Tate Ratledge or Christian Mahogany, and Glasgow looks pretty good at center. He's not Frank Ragnow. Frank Ragnow is you can rarely say this about offensive linemen, but a difference-making player. Huge fan of him and his game. So that's a major loss. And then the coordinators, right? Like there's a lot to be determined. There's a reason why Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn were so sought after as potential head coach candidates. And I've seen this in Philly a couple times, Matt, where you lose both coordinators, and no matter how ready you think you are to replace those guys, the Eagles dropped off from 2022 to 2023. They had to upgrade both coordinator spots. They moved on from both coordinators after 2023, and in 2024, they were much better. They won the Super Bowl handily. Coordinators matter a lot, and I'll believe that the Lions don't have a drop-off there when I see it.